I drove out into rural Georgia because I had 3 papers to serve and my boss paid per stop. I packed a clipboard, pepper spray, and a portable charger, and my plan was to hit the address off a county road, get a signature or a refusal, then be back on the highway before sunset. I'd done it 100 times. I told myself the dead zones were just dead zones. The first 2 stops went how they always go. Somebody peeking through blinds like I'm a cop, somebody pretending they don't speak English, somebody's pit bull hurling itself at a screen door while the owner acts like that's funny. I had dust on my shoes, sweat on my back, the kind of low-grade anger you get when you're getting paid to be the bad news. I checked my fuel on my phone at a red light and saw the last address sitting there like a dare. It was one of those county road, then turn onto an unnamed road deals. No estretriz, no neighbors. The kind of place where you can stand in somebody's yard and scream, and the only thing that hears you is a pine tree. I called my boss before I turned off the main road because I already knew what he'd say if I didn't. He picked up on the second ring, chewing like my life was a nuisance. I told him the GPS was taking me into a spot with no service and that I might lose him. He said, "Don't start with that dead zone crap. It's one stop. Get your signature. Get out." I asked if the client had a phone number for the person. Anything, just to feel like this wasn't me walking into a hole with a clipboard. He told me to stop being dramatic, then reminded me I didn't get paid for vibes. I got paid for proof of service. I hung up on him before I said something that would get me fired, and that pissed me off even more because I needed the work. The GPS dumped me onto a narrow dirt road with trees leaning in like they were listening. My signal died. My car started sputtering like it hated the sand. I rolled to a stop, popped the hood, and immediately heard another engine behind me. Slow, patient. For a second, I stood there with both hands on the hood, just staring at the engine like staring could fix it. I'm not a mechanic. I know what coolant looks like. I know what a dead battery sounds like. This wasn't that. It was more like my car had decided, right there, that it didn't want to go any farther. The road felt wrong in a way I can't explain without sounding like an idiot. Not haunted, not spooky, just wrong like when you walk into the wrong house by accident and every hair stands up because the air isn't yours. The trees were too close. The dirt was too fine like powder. My phone was a brick. No bars, no loading circle, nothing. I popped the trunk for the jumper cables out of habit, even though there was nobody around to jump me. Then I heard the tires crunch behind me again, and I snapped around like a dog hearing a leash. A truck pulled up and didn't pass. The driver stayed inside. Headlights off, just watching. I waved once. No wave back. It was an old pickup, dark color, the kind that just absorbs light. The windshield was grimy enough that his face looked smeared behind it. I waited for him to roll forward, to honk, to do anything normal. Nothing. He just sat there with the engine ticking, like he had nowhere else to be. I went back to the hood and pretended I was busy, because that's what you do when you don't want to admit you're scared. I tugged on a hose, I tapped the battery terminals, I held my breath and listened. That truck didn't move. I could feel him looking at me like a hand on the back of my neck. I tried to talk myself into calm. Maybe he lived out here. Maybe he saw me stalled and didn't want to get stuck too. Maybe he was waiting for me to wave again, so he could feel like he wasn't bothering me. That's what my brain did. Kept building excuses so I didn't have to act. My hands shook anyway. I had my pepper spray clipped inside my bag. Not even in my pocket because I'm a moron who always thinks the next stop will be normal. I shoved the cables back in the trunk and forced myself to breathe slow. Then I stepped toward the truck because the space between us felt worse than closing it. I stepped toward the truck and smelled hot oil and something sour, like old meat left in a cooler. The smell hit me before he even moved. It wasn't farm smell. It wasn't manure or swamp or anything you can label. It was stale and sharp and wrong, like an animal that's been dead too long in summer heat. The window cracked a few inches. A man's eyes slid over my shoes, my hands, my throat. He asked who I was looking for. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't even curious. It sounded like a checkpoint. I didn't answer. I backed up. I know that sounds stupid. Why not just lie? Why not say my cousin? Why not say anything? But something in his tone made every fake answer feel like a trap. Like he wanted me to pick a story so he could peel it apart. I took another step back, and my heels sank a little in the soft dirt. He watched that too, like he cataloged everything. He said something about how people get turned around out here, and his mouth twitched like he was enjoying the idea of it. I felt my face getting hot, that mix of anger and fear, and I hated that he could see me react. I kept backing up toward my car, hand already digging for the pepper spray, trying not to show I was digging for it. His door opened. He climbed out with a grin, and a chain looped around his fist like it was normal equipment. Not a tow chain on the truck bed. Not a strap. It was in his hand, loose, ready. The links looked worn and greasy like they'd been handled a lot. He wasn't huge. He wasn't some movie monster. He was average, which made it worse, because average men do this shit every day and get away with it. He stood with his boots planted like he owned the road, like the road belonged to him, and I was a thing that wandered onto it by mistake. I raised the pepper spray. He laughed and took another step like he'd seen that move before. He said, "That ain't gonna help you." And he said it like he was giving me advice, like we were buddies, and he was teaching me something. My mouth went dry. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears like a drum. I had this stupid flash of my boss rolling his eyes if I called him and said, "Some guy with a chain," like I was being dramatic again. I had another flash of my mom telling me to keep my keys between my fingers like that's a plan. My whole life boiled down to a can of pepper spray in my hand and a car that wouldn't run. I sprayed him anyway and ran back to my car, slammed the hood down, and cranked the ignition until it caught. The spray hit him full in the face, and he jerked back, swearing, but he didn't fall over. He didn't run away. He just staggered and blinked and laughed this ugly wet laugh like I'd entertained him. That laugh chased me. I slammed the hood like the car could feel my panic and help me. I dove into the driver's seat with dirt on my knees, fumbled the key, dropped it once, grabbed it again, jammed it in, turned it so hard my wrist hurt. The engine coughed, died, coughed again. He slapped the side of my car with the chain, and the sound was metallic and casual, like he was knocking on a door. I cranked again, and the engine screamed like it was dying. It caught just enough to lurch forward. I didn't buckle my seatbelt. I didn't even close the door all the way at first. I just shoved it with my elbow and floored it. The tires spun in the powder dirt, and the car fishtailed out, branches smacking the sides. The road was so narrow, I had to fight the steering wheel with both hands just to keep from sliding into the ditch. The truck behind me didn't chase right away. That's what really fucked me up. He didn't roar after me like a movie. He waited. I saw him in the mirror just standing there by my dead patch of dirt, wiping his face with his sleeve, watching me leave like he knew I couldn't really leave. Then the truck started rolling, not fast, just steady, keeping distance like he was letting me burn gas, letting me think I'd won. My car bounced over ruts, and my teeth clacked. Every time the engine hesitated, my stomach dropped because I thought it would die again, and I'd be stuck, and he'd be there, patient, chain in hand, like it was always his time. I kept telling myself, just hit the main road, just hit the main road, like the main road was a force field. I almost missed it because I was shaking so hard I couldn't read the little rusted sign. When the dirt finally turned to pavement under my tires, I felt this stupid burst of relief, so strong it made me dizzy. I looked in the mirror and I didn't see the truck immediately, and my brain tried to pretend it was over. Then I saw it way back, tucked into the trees, already turning away like he didn't care. Like he'd done enough. I pulled over at the first wide shoulder and tried to breathe like a person again. My hands were locked around the wheel. I had pepper spray residue on my fingers, and it burned my nose when I wiped my face. I wanted to call someone and rant and cry and swear and feel like I was real, but my phone still had one sad bar that kept dropping. I sat there anyway, engine running, eyes scanning the road, waiting for that truck to reappear, because once your body flips into that mode, it doesn't just flip back. 10 minutes later, on the main road, I saw a strip of duct tape stuck under my wiper. On it, written in thick marker, my full name. No address, no sreds, just proof he already had me. I took the South Georgia spray route because 2 guys called out and the county still wanted the traps checked before the weekend. I packed hip waders, a dipper cup, and a radio, and my plan was to walk the ditch line, swap bait, log larvae counts, then be back at the truck before the heat cooked me. I went alone because it was just water. I kept my phone in a dry bag like that meant anything. Doug, my supervisor, didn't even pretend it was a good idea. He just kept saying the same bullshit. It's on the schedule. I told him if I slid in that ditch by myself, nobody would know for hours. He acted like I was trying to start a union. Don't make it a thing, he said. Wear your PPE. Stay on the bank. You've done this 100 times. I reminded him the last guy who stayed on the bank slipped and broke ribs, and the county wrote him up for missing shifts. Doug got quiet for a second, then went right back to acting like I was the problem, like I was being negative, like the ditch would politely wait until another employee showed up. By the time I hit that stretch of road, the air felt thick enough to chew. Pine, sand, flat land, and that sour, wet smell that sits low even when it hasn't rained. I parked on the shoulder where the GPS that wanted me and stared down at the drainage ditch like it was just another stop. From up top, it looked harmless. Darty water, weeds, mud, stuff you step in and curse about. I climbed down with my clipboard and bait bucket, dipper cup clipped to my belt, radio hooked where I could smack it if it acted up. I heard dispatch faint through static. My phone showed no bars. I told myself I'd be fast and careful, like careful is a magic word. The trap was staked near a culvert where the water slows and everything collects. You pull the old bait, drop new bait, dip for larvae, count the wriggles, write the number, move on. I could see the stake through the weeds, just a little flag and a wire basket half submerged. I found a spot where the bank looked firm and stepped in because the reeds were thick and I needed to get close. First step, firm. Second step, firm. Third step, the bottom vanished like a lie. Mud grabbed my boot and pulled. I shifted weight and sank to my knees before I could even swear. The smell punched up at the same time, rot sulfur, warm, stagnant shit, and it hit the back of my throat like I'd swallowed a mouthful of pennies. Tiny bubbles popped around my shins, lazy little blips like the ditch was laughing. The water climbed inside my waders, and the rubber started sticking to my legs. I tried to lift my foot, and the mud held harder. Not stuck like you're in soft dirt. Held, like a suction cup. I braced on reeds and snapped them. I jabbed the dipper handle into the bank like a cane, and it sank in two. I clicked my radio and got one ugly burst of crackle, then nothing. Dead. I shook it, hit the button again, got silence. I looked up at the road. No cars pulling over. No one slowing down. Just heat shimmer and passing traffic that didn't care. I tried my phone anyway, jabbing the screen through the dry bag like that would change physics. No signal. I could have screamed, and it would have just been noise in the trees. I tried to do the textbook move next. I loosened my wader belt and tried to work my foot out of the boot. The mud answered by sucking tighter. It felt like somebody's hand around my ankle, squeezing just to remind me who was winning. I leaned back, put my full weight on my free leg and pulled. The boot didn't budge. My hip twisted and pain ran up my side. I started to sweat cold under the heat, that nasty clammy sweat you get when your body realizes it's in trouble. Then something slid under the surface against my shin, slow, heavy, not a snake twitch, not a fish dart, a steady glide like a body deciding where to bite. My brain went straight to gator because we see them and because gators don't rush. But this didn't feel like a quick bump or a tail slap. It pressed and moved, kept contact like it was tracing me. It hugged the curve of my shin and paused right at my ankle, right where the rubber was thinnest from wear. I saw the weeds part in a line, the way water parts around something solid, and my stomach flipped so hard I thought I'd throw up. I slapped the water with my free hand, hard like a kid trying to scare off a dog. The surface rippled and smoothed out again. Whatever it was didn't flinch. It stayed there, steady, like it already knew I couldn't run. Panic makes you waste strength. I did it anyway at first. I yanked, I rocked, I tried to stomp my trap boot free and just drove it deeper. The mud climbed my calf. Every pull tightened the seal. My knee started to burn and my thigh cramped, and I knew if I kept thrashing, I'd gas out right there with my leg glued in place. I tried to push off with my other foot and felt that one start to sink too, like the ditch wanted both legs. I picture my face going under, the waders filling, the mud sealing over me like a lid, and somebody finding my clipboard floating 2 days later and calling it an accident. I forced myself to stop. I swallowed the urge to flail, and I went for the gross option. I remember an old guy on the crew telling me suction is air and seal. Break the seal, you break the hold. I reached down into that muck, shoved my fingers along my trap boot, and felt the mud squeeze my wrist like it wanted my hand too. The water was warm down there, which is wrong. It felt alive. My fingers hit something soft and swollen. I thought it was weeds until my hand sank in. Dead bait, bloated animal, something that had been soaking until it turned into meat jelly. I grabbed it and it squished, and a little pocket of gas burped out around my knuckles, and the stink got sweeter and worse. I gagged and kept going because the alternative was staying married to that mud. The thing under the water bumped my shin again, harder. Not a nip, a test. Like it was annoyed I wasn't giving a clean shot. I felt it slide up and down my ankle once, slow, like a thumb rubbing the spot before you press. I smeared that dead, swollen mess along the mud seam around my calf, rubbing slime between rubber and suction, trying to break the seal with anything, air, grease, whatever. I shoved my fingers down the side again, twisted my leg a fraction at a time, pulled slow, pushed, pulled like I was working a tire off a rim. My fingers went numb. My forearm burned. Mud packed under my nails, and I could feel grit scraping skin off. Bubbles rose near my ankle, bigger this time, and I felt that heavy glide come back and close. It pressed the side of my boot, then the other side like hands trying on a shoe. I held my breath and kept working because if I stopped, it felt like I was giving it permission. I pulled again, slow, and felt a tiny slip. Water leaked down the side of my calf where the seal finally broke. I kept pressure, kept pulling, and my leg came free with a wet pop. The release threw me. I fell backward, and my shoulders hit the water hard. My waders filled instantly, warm swamp water flooding up and dragging my hips down. For a second, I couldn't tell which way was up because the weight changed so fast. I kicked and felt mud grab again, tried to catch my breath, and swallowed ditch water that tasted like rust and rotten eggs. Something shoved my lower leg onto the surface. That's the best way I can say it. A steady push, like a body leaning into me. Not a splash, not a tail slap, a shove. I kicked blind, and my boot scraped something solid. I rolled onto my stomach, clawed at weeds, and crawled. I crawled out on my elbows, choking, covered in black sludge that stank like death. I used the weeds like rope and tore them up by the fistful. My arm shook. My hand slipped. I kept pulling anyway until my knees hit dry sand and the mud finally let go. I flopped onto the shoulder and lay there like I'd been shot, listening to cars hiss past, waiting for my lungs to stop burning. When I finally got to the truck, I stripped the waders off like they were trying to drown me. Water poured out, black and oily. Mud chunks fell with wet thuds. My socks were soaked. My ankle throbbed. I tried the radio again and got a thin crackle, like it wanted to work now that it didn't matter. I almost called Doug just to tell him to go fuck himself, but I knew how that would go. He'd say I should have been more careful. He'd make it my fault. He always does. I looked down at the rubber near my foot and my stomach dropped. There was a row of fresh punctures on the waders near my ankle. Whatever brushed me had tested the material first, like it was checking if I was edible. I picked up a Georgia meter route because the company was behind and they paid overtime for hard access reads. I packed a handheld scanner, a flashlight, and a spare battery, and my plan was to walk the edge of a rural subdivision, scan what I could, tag the locked ones, and head out before dark. I worked alone because that's how they schedule it. I told myself the abandoned houses were just empty shells. The first stretch was the usual crap. dogs hammering fences, gates chained for no reason, the scanner choking whenever the bars dropped. The route sheet was all past due marks. I could already picture my supervisor blaming me for it, like, I personally invented slow. I've been snapping at him all week about safety, and he'd been snapping back about numbers, like a spreadsheet means more than a body. Then I got to the address that still makes my stomach flip. The front door was hanging open and the meter was on the back wall. No car, no curtains, yard half dead. I stood there with the scanner in my hand, and I had a clean chance to mark it unable and leave. I didn't. I told myself, do the job, get paid, don't be a baby. That's how you talk yourself into dumb shit. I cut through the yard, and the air turned sour near the house. Mildew and old smoke and garbage that sat too long. The open door looked like a mouth. I stepped in because the brush around back was thick, and I didn't feel like fighting it. My light hit the kitchen floor, and the dust wasn't even. There were footprints. Fresh ones. Too clean, too recent. Like someone had walked through and didn't care if anybody noticed. I froze long enough to feel my heartbeat in my neck. Then I moved anyway because I'm a grown adult who apparently can't listen to his own instincts. I should have backed out. Instead, I kept going because I wanted the scan done, and my brain kept pretending that's professional. The kitchen was torn up, drawers out, cabinets crooked. I aimed my flashlight down the hallway and saw a darker smear in the dust, like something got dragged. I told myself it was an animal. I didn't believe it. The house held that dead quiet where your own breathing sounds loud, like you're the only noise it has. The back door stuck. I shoved it open and stepped onto the porch. The boards flexed under me, soft and tired. The meter box was ripped open. Wires were spliced messy, taped and twisted like someone stole power and didn't give a damn if it started a fire. I snapped photos because that's what they drill into you. Document everything so they can blame you later anyway. I leaned in to scan, and I heard a thump inside. One heavy hit, then another like something being knocked against wood. Not a little creak. Not the house settling. It stopped in the silence after it felt loaded, like whoever made that noise heard me. I tried to hurry without looking like I was hurrying. I shifted my weight, and a nail punched through my boot sole. It went in hard and hot. I yanked my foot up, swore, hopped back, and blood started soaking my sock right away. I tried to step around it, and the porch gave under me. The panel dropped like it was hinged. My leg fell, threw up to the thigh. Wood snapped and bit my shin. I grabbed the railing and hauled up, and the broken edge scraped skin off me like a saw. I was half stuck, half dangling, heart slamming, brain screaming one thing: get out. Then something underneath grabbed my ankle. Not friendly, not panicked, firm, practiced. Fingers locked around my boot like a clamp. I kicked, and the grip tightened. I flashed my light down and saw a face in the crawl space. Eyes wide and shiny, mouth moving like it was trying to whisper without sound. Not attacking me, clinging to me, like I was the first solid thing it had touched in a long time. The hands looked raw, like they'd been rubbing against dirt and wood for days. I jerked again, and the face pushed up into the beam for a second. I saw grime, a split lip, a jaw shaking like it was holding back sound. Its eyes kept flicking past me, not just at me, like it was more afraid of what was behind it than it was afraid of me. My brain threw this stupid thought at me, grabbed them, pulled them up like I had any leverage. Another set of hands reached from deeper in the dark and yanked that face back like a leash. Fast and mean. The face snapped away and vanished into black. I heard a choked breath, not a word. The first hands on my ankle slipped because whoever owned them got dragged away. At the same time, the porch panel started to swing shut on my leg. Not for gravity, from pressure, like somebody under there pushed it up to trap me. The edge pressed my thigh, and I felt my stomach drop through the hole with it. I went full panic. I braced my good foot, white-knuckled the railing, and ripped my leg upward. My boot snagged on splintered wood. I kicked, scraped more skin off my shin, and felt something scratch at my heel from below, like fingers trying to hook me back down. The panel slapped my calf. I tore free, so hard my sock peeled off and stayed behind, and my punctured foot hit the porch with a slap that sent pain up into my hip. I didn't check again. I bolted through the back door, slammed my shoulder into the frame, and almost ate it on the kitchen floor. My flashlight swung across the dust, and those footprints were still there, clean as day. I had this insane thought that mine were about to join them, that I'd be another mark in that dust, and nobody would care. I sprinted out the front door and cut across the yard like the house was on fire. My boots squished with blood. I didn't look back until I hit my truck, and when I did, I expected somebody in the doorway watching me. There was nothing, just that open door, dark inside. I fumbled my keys, got in, locked the doors, and started the engine with hands shaking so bad I could barely turn the ignition. My phone had no bars. Of course it didn't. I drove until the screen finally lit up with signal and pulled over hard enough to rock the cab. When I called 911, my voice came out thin and wrong. I gave the address. I said a person grabbed me from under the porch. I said another person pulled them back. I said the panel tried to close on me. The operator kept asking if I was sure, kept asking if I saw a weapon, kept asking if I went inside. I kept answering, yes, I don't know, I just need someone to check. I sat there after the call with my foot on the dash and the cab smelling like iron. I wrapped my sockless foot in paper towels from the glove box and pressed until the shaking slowed. I kept staring at my ankle like I expected bruised fingerprints to bloom. Every time a car passed, I flinched. I wanted to go back with the cops and point at everything like a madman, but I also knew I was one bad decision away from getting myself trapped for real. After that, I called my supervisor because my brain was still in worker mode. I told him I was bleeding, told him there was power theft, told him someone was under that house. He didn't ask if I was okay. He asked if I entered the residence. When I said the door was open and I stepped through to reach the back, he flipped it into policy and blame. He wanted pictures of my boot, pictures of the porch, a written statement before end of day. I told him I was still parked on the shoulder with blood on the floor mat, and he said it didn't matter. It was time sensitive. When I mentioned 911, his tone changed. He warned me not to make it a scene because it could cause problems with the client, like the worst outcome here was an angry email. I snapped and told him to stop. He pivoted straight to liability, said I shouldn't have gone inside, said if I wanted medical paperwork it could get complicated, and then he tried to bully me into finishing the rest of the route. I hung up on him with my hands, shaking worse than before. They searched later. They told me they found no one and no evidence of occupancy. They said the crawl space was empty. They said the porch looked rotted and the panel could have dropped on its own. They said maybe kids had been messing around. The more I insisted about the hands and the face, the more their tone went flat, like I was wasting their time. My company wrote me up for trespassing and missing scans. HR sat me down and slid a form across the table like I was the problem. They asked why I didn't disengage sooner. They asked why I didn't call it in first. I showed them my punctured boot and my torn shin and the photos of the ripped meter box. They nodded and still stamped me with safety violation. Then they told me in the same breath that next time I needed to complete the route or I'd lose overtime eligibility. I almost threw up right there. I still see that face when I close my eyes. The worst part isn't the trap. It's knowing I was the closest thing to an exit that person touched all day, and I didn't pull them out.